featuring Dr. Michael Ventris, meteorologist Sean Brett, and your host, Colin Golzinski.
Welcome back, everyone. Week 8 Fantasy Football Weather Guys. We got our full crew. We got Dr. Michael Ventris, Dr. Nicholas Schiraldi, and meteorologist Sean Bratton. I'm your host, Colin Golzinski. How is everyone doing tonight?
Oh, we're good. We're good. I'm happy to see everyone here. It's fun to have a full crowd in the house tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy we have everyone on staff today, and we're going to need it because we have another full slate of games to talk about with you today. So excited to get into some of the action for this week.
Before we get to
and
go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Go ahead, Colin.
No, I was just going to say, before we got into the action of this week, I want to bring it back to last week, but I want you to talk about your intro. I should not cut you off. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say I'm waiting for the snow to start falling here in Albany, so it's going to be a long night for me.
One of a kind, Nick. One of a kind.
I know. These weather weenies I associate with. I love it.
Hey, actually, really quick, before we get into the recap of last week, I just want to say, we just had a pretty significant hurricane strike last night across Louisiana. Louisiana had their 4th or 5th strike of the year. So, and we saw major power outages all throughout the Southeast from impacts from Hurricane Zeta. So our thoughts are with those who were impacted by that storm. We all love weather here, but we never want to see those impacts on you guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Mike. So as I was saying, we're going to bring it back to last week first. What a game, Kansas City. There was just a lot of weird things happened. It was a defensive game, which really really put a damper on Kelsey's night. They benched Mahomes. They covered the over. I don't know, Sean. What do you think about that game?
That was a wild game. The first off, it was cold, it was windy, and it was snowy, and those effects were seen on the field. Players were having trouble completing passes. People were going to the running game. We saw the Chiefs defense break out with 2 defensive TDs.
Oh, yeah.
It was, Mike, you played that defense, didn't you?
I did, in all my DFS lineups this past week.
We saw Pat Mahomes with barely reaching the 200-yard mark. Yeah. Drew Lock.
Horrible.
Everyone was struggling in this game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire only had 40-something yards. He got the TD for you. Le'Veon Bell didn't have a great first showing. He didn't get a lot of opportunity. But this was a mess. And then somehow, some way, me reading these stats, they still met the over in this game. It was just crazy.
I will say, Sean, the most important thing you said, though, that people were wondering is CEH got the touchdown. Bell didn't. He did, which is very unusual for him inside the red zone to be able to rush and get in to the end zone. But if you looked, nobody could grab onto him. They were having trouble getting a grasp on him to bring him down. He was just sliding off people. Slippery when wet.
Probably due to some of the cold and wet conditions they had there.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the rush the carries for CEH versus Bell. And this is Bell's first game in the offense. It was pretty close. Six carries for Bell, 8 carries for CEH. So, Sean, as a CEH owner, how you feeling, man?
Yeah, I think you can use this rhetoric for really any situation applied to this game. I still don't know. I don't think anybody knows because the Kansas City Chiefs were barely on the field, after they were getting all these defensive touchdowns. So it wasn't really enough to see how Andy Reid was going to use these backs. I will say that, CH, when he got the ball, still looked pretty good. He was able to get a lot of yards after catch. But I just don't think we have enough data yet to really get a good feel for what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this was Drew Lock's second game in the snow, right? We saw him last year against the Chiefs struggle, and then again this year. I think we're seeing a pattern here with Drew Lock. Maybe he's just not a cold weather snow type of quarterback, and that's the problem if you're on the Denver Broncos. Because Denver gets
zero TDs and 2 interceptions. I think he did eclipse the 250-yard mark, but they were down. He had to throw the ball. Noah Fant wasn't even in this game. This was. You had good running the ball, but then you had Melvin Gordon throw the ball past Drew Lock, this huge fumble. It was craziness.
So this week we have 4 games. We also have a weather event that's kind of evolving tonight that we have not shown. I actually want to do this kind of in an interesting way because we have a new table that we're going to roll out of our live table. And so tonight's games, we have Falcons at Carolina Panthers, which we are watching, and then we have 4 games that show some pretty cautious impacts for one Great Lakes system that Sean will get into.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have, yeah, go ahead, Colin.
No, go ahead, Sean. I just didn't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, I apologize.
No, we can, do we have some maps to look at for the upcoming weather events?
Yeah.
Are we going to focus on the game tonight first, and then we'll get into it?
Yeah, I think we're going to focus on the
let's do that. So for Carolina, as Mike mentioned, we have Zedemuth through, so we have some remnants of that system, and we expect some rain potentially for the Charlotte area for game time throughout tonight. Now, with that being said, we don't expect this to be a prolonged rain event. We're expecting some showers to kind of go through the area, maybe impact for a quarter or so, but we don't expect anything prolonged. We don't expect there to be any significant fantasy implications for our Charlotte and Falcons game tonight. We may see winds escalate a little bit, but again, we're not too worried about that. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater has an amazing matchup against the Falcons, who are ranked 31st in the league in passing defense. He is a big-time streamer this week. I say still go with him. You got Robbie Anderson, you got DJ Moore. I'm leaning on them in one of my leagues. I'm still going with them. And then the other side of the ball, you still gotta start your Atlanta receivers. Matt Ryan may have a tougher matchup against a stouter Charlotte defense, but again, I'm starting anybody you were going to start. I would start in this game, including kickers.
Yeah, we have a question actually about kickers from Stockley. Thank you. They're asking if they should start Ko or Greskowski. And Koo. Sorry, yeah. Young Ho Koo, I believe is. Yep. What you're saying, Sean, is we say go with your lineup that you're going to start, as we don't see this could be a too much of an impact.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, Gostkowski's going to, if I'm looking at the question here, he's going to, there's going to be some weather featured in that game anyway when New England heads to the Bills. And that weather may actually be more impactful, higher winds, potentially more prolonged precipitation. And the Bills, their defense has been, a weird defense this year, but I'm not confident.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
Goskowski's actually on the Titans. So he's
I'm thinking of New England. I'm sorry.
Oh, look at that. Sean's bringing it back in time.
Oh my God. I'm still thinking he's on the Patriots.
No worries. So Goskowski's on Tennessee, and according to our weather table, Tennessee is playing.
Tennessee is playing the Bengals.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, the Bengals.
Yeah, the Bengals. So there's some wind in the Tennessee-Cincinnati game. It's actually the notable mention of the week because of the 4 games we're going to be, highlighting this week. Cincinnati, the winds are going to be a little bit less down there, but there still is a little bit of wind there. And but again, it's one of those marginal cases. So, Sean, now that we know that Gostkowski is going up against the Bengals, who are not a great defense, do you still feel confident in what you said about Gostkowski?
No, yeah, I'm still thinking Patriots here, and my mind's all on that since that's going to be one of our biggest impact games. I would have to go Gostkowski here. I'm more confident on them being able to move the ball in that game. And I would just be more confident in his attempts, in the number of attempts that he's going to get. So that would be my pick between those two for this week.
Do we know what the over-under is on that game? For the Falcons-Panthers game tonight? Any chance?
For the game tonight?
Yeah, just a question. Someone else has asked if we predict the final score, but we don't think weather's going to have too much of an impact, so go with what you were thinking prior to any discussion.
Yeah. It is right now a 52-point over-under.
52-point over-under. That's we don't think weather will change that, so.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be locked in here.
Yeah. So going back to this week, our new table that will be pushed out soon. We do have our other table that people are used to on our website, But like I said, we have 4 major games this week that we are looking at cautious weather, all from the same system. We have Minnesota at Green Bay, which is going to be just a great game anyway for the rivalry. Another rivalry, Patriots at Bills, which is so dynamic this year with a lot of moving parts because we're seeing a completely different Patriots team come to town. And then we have the Raiders at Browns. And then we're finishing off our weather discussion with Saints at the Windy City, Chicago at the Bears. So, Sean, why don't you talk us through what we're seeing from this Great Lakes front system?
Yeah, so that's going to be the big story in town this week, and that's really going to impact all games in and around the Great Lakes region. So we're talking the Packers game, the Bears game, the Browns game, and also at Buffalo as well. And so what we're seeing is a system that's over the Pacific Northwest, and that's going to trek to the east. Along southern Canada, and this is going to be a fairly dry system, so we're not going to have to worry too much about precipitation with this one. But what we are going to have set up is a really, really strong pressure gradient. I feel like recently we've been talking a lot about pressure gradients, and the reason for this is that we have a really strong high pressure that's going to be setting up lee of the Rockies. And then we have this area of low pressure that's going to be over the Great Lakes. So you can see what Colin's bringing up now, that area north of Montana. That's going to be the system that we're going to be tracking. And you can already see some of the winds starting to build in and around that system with the oranges, the reds. Those are some higher winds. And now that's going to move to the east come game time on Saturday afternoon. And winds are really, really going to strengthen. You can see this right now. We are in Saturday afternoon. If we keep going a few more time steps. Yeah. And then just maybe a few more here.
18Z Sunday is game time.
18Z, yeah. So here we go. You could see all the yellows and oranges and reds in and around the Great Lakes region. Look at all of those orange circles. Those are our stadium locations. So you can see that we have orange for Green Bay, for Chicago, for Cleveland, for also Buffalo. So like I mentioned, we're not as worried about precipitation with this, but because of the high winds, there are concerns. We're looking at 20 mile an hour plus, even greater for some of these games. Now, with that being said, we're also expecting a potential cold front to move past Western New York for the Buffalo game. So we may see some precipitation for that one, but we'll expand on that when we get to these individual games.
And you can see our notable mention game down there in Cincinnati, southwestern Ohio, there, right on the border of those yellow contours or shading, which is, winds are going to be, there's going to be some winds there out of the west, but will not be as strong as winds as some of the stadiums near the Great Lakes. And that's why our algorithm is highlighting that green circle there, showing less or no impacts rather than compared to the orange circles, which are essentially saying, hey, pay attention to these games. There's a chance that weather impacts.
So that's our map. I'm going to take that off the screen and let everyone see our beautiful faces. So why don't we start with the Minnesota-Green Bay game, Mike? Why don't you talk us through? We do see that the starting over-under was 55.5, but I think we saw something that was kind of interesting from the start of the opening over-unders to where we are today. Nice.
Oh, Nick is feeling the Green Bay love right now. Look at that cheese head.
I will
there
give
it
a
is.
shout out because
Putting it out
for
there.
our viewers, Nick is a proud share owner of Lambeau Field, so.
Yeah, bro. Hey, your head smells there, man. Stinky head.
Stinky head. Nice, Mike.
Yeah, we got this.
Very creative.
We got. I try. So we're watching this game here. Winds are going to be the biggest threat here. 25 miles per hour, according to our weather information out of the west-northwest. Now, the one thing I want to point out here is Lambeau Field is actually oriented north to south. If you look at a compass and look at the field from a satellite, where winds are coming out of the west, northwest. So this is going to be a cross-field event, essentially a cross-wind event, where winds are going to be blowing perpendicular to the way that the stadium is configured. This asks some questions now, right? Like, what type of impacts might we expect from essentially these high winds? Well, we could start with the Vikings, guys. The quarterback, Kirk Cousins, he's been mediocre at best this year. He does seem to be getting a little bit more of a step when he starts playing the ball with Thielen and the rookie Jefferson. He's currently priced in at 6,000 on DraftKings, which is the 14th overall. Looking into his statistics, Kirk Cousins back in games where winds were 20 miles per hour or greater. He's only had 3 games in his 95-game career. And all 3 of those games, he was with the Washington Redskins. So we haven't really seen it yet with regards to Kirk Cousins and how he actually produces in the new offense in a windy environment. Now, I do want to say, of the 3 games that he has played, he's averaged actually a good amount of passes, 36 pass attempts, because Washington's a bad football team, no offense, and they're always behind. But he hasn't done really a lot. He hasn't produced a ton. He's only got 11 points in one game, 18 points in another, and 27 points. So, and just a tidbit here, the 11-point game when Kirk Cousins, didn't really perform well in these windy conditions. Temperatures were cold. They were 14 degrees. We're not expecting it to be that cold in Green Bay this week in the upper 30s. So just wanted to point out there, we're still, unfortunately, Cousins doesn't have a huge amount of sample size here, but he is going to, something that I'm not targeting him in my DFS lineups this week. I don't know how you guys feel about Cousins.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I'm not targeting him here. I just don't trust him in these conditions. I just don't trust him against Green Bay. Period. At Green Bay, I'm staying away from Cousins this week.
Awesome. Okay. So, and what Colin is, Colin, are you sharing your screen right now?
I'm about to. I was going to say that I am now. So this is our tool that Mike will talk through, but this was the data that Mike was talking about with Kirk Cousins and the weather events, and this is what we use to help analyze our weather impacts by player. So these were the events, the green bars. Go ahead, Mike.
So Colin, if you change the wind speed slider to 20 miles per hour and take put the precipitation off to 0, that way we can games and we can understand exactly how he performs. And I think if you go down to now the table, I can take a look at what we're looking at here. If you scroll down the page, Colin, and okay, so we had 2 games, and I know we did some updates in the back end here. So this kind of shows it here that that there's a chance that he doesn't perform well versus one of the games he did pretty not bad there with a 26-point game. So 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's interesting there that he did pretty well. So moving on from Cousins, I want to focus on who he's throwing the ball. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's actually rated the number 1 rookie wide receiver so far this year. He's been amazing. And Adam Thielen has been a star, right? He was at one point he was rated the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football when looking at all statistics. So Thielen, he's pretty high on DraftKings. He's at a $7,200 price point. He's only had 1 game in wins greater than 25 miles per hour, and he played against my New York Jets. Guys, any idea on any thoughts about how he might handle a matchup against my New York Jets?
Well, I think he'll do fairly well in a normal game. So I can't imagine.
He crushed it. He had a fantastic game against the Jets in a windy game. 26 fantasy points in that game. He had 110 yards and a touchdown. So I just want to say the guy's a star. In windy games, he can still produce.
Yeah, and I also want to say, one thing that we notice is in inclement weather, the QB always goes to who they trust, right? They want to get that trusted receiver that, especially if you're not as confident playing in certain weather conditions, you're going to want to go to that guy. And Adam Thielen is that guy for Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't be too worried. He's at $7,200 this week on DFS, correct, Mike?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the 4th highest.
Yeah. So yeah, you're saying you would take him then here?
If I was paying up, it's someone to consider. I think he's a safe option if you want to play up and pay up for essentially your wide receiver. But actually, this week I'll give you a little sneak preview. I'm not paying up in wide receiver this week. I'm actually paying up in running back this week.
I like that move. We did have one question come in I just want to address because we've been talking a lot about wind in this podcast. So somebody asked, is 20-mile-an-hour gust considered strong? So one of the things that we have highlighted is that when we are looking at player statistics and how they performed in weather conditions, one of the thresholds we look at is what is that wind value where we really start to see an impact? And that usually is around the 15 to 20 mile an hour mark.
So Spain winds, right?
Sustained, though. There's a difference.
More sustained. But I mean, hey, if we have gusts that are persistent throughout the game, we've also seen that can have an impact as well. Now, for tonight, I think this question is in regards to tonight. We don't expect high winds for a majority of the game. We're talking more in the 10 to 12 mile an hour range, maybe some isolated times of 20 plus, but we're not expecting that to be very impactful because it's just not going to persist long enough throughout the game to be impactful.
Yep.
I think that's a good call there, Sean. Okay, so let me keep rolling up with our lineup here for the Vikings game.
Let's go to Green Bay.
Well, but before we get there, I just want to make a note. Dalvin Cook's coming back, guys. He's back from injury. I'm sure Minnesota is excited to have him back. I try to look at some statistics for Dalvin Cook in windy games. He hasn't played any games where winds were greater than 20 miles per hour, so this is probably going to be the windiest game of his career. But I think he's going to be a safe floor play this week. Green Bay is ranked 29th against the run. And I'll tell you right now, guys, Dalvin Cook's in my starting lineup for DFS this week. He is a pricey option, though. He's 7,500, so he's the third highest running back on the slate. But I love his matchup this week, and I think he's going to be a solid floor. Just hope he doesn't get injured. There's that chance coming off injury. You got to be concerned a little bit. So if you want to roll the die, I think Dalvin Cook it could be a decent play.
Speaking of
it's always a little risky.
Go ahead.
It's always just quickly. It's always a little risky taking those players once they're coming back from injury. But I agree, Mike. If he's in and he's healthy, he could really be a boom candidate this week.
So switching gears, Mike, taking it to the Green Bay. But I got a question. What if Williams comes back? What do you think the Green Bay game is going to look like? The run game.
Do you mean Adam Jones? Adam
Jones, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I'll skip over to the running backs quick. Adam Jones. I was hoping he was going to play last week. It was a surprise injury late in the week. You never love to see those types of injuries. He ended up not playing, right? Looked at his status today. He hasn't practiced either yesterday or today. So I think that's what I read today, but I'll double, if you guys can double check that. So I'm a little worried he's going to play. He's not going to play. I actually went last week and took a chance on AJ Dillon, or shall I say AJ Bustin. That guy he did not perform well at all. You saw Jamal Williams take the majority of the work here. And I think Aaron Jones is out, I think it's probably going to go back to Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see how much he's priced on DFS because last week
that was the question
against
right?
Houston.
What is Williams going to do if? Yeah. So what do you?
Yeah, I think we got to look at his price point if you're talking DFS. I mean, he almost had 20 points in our league. He had 19 carries, 77 yards, and a TD last week. So that tells me that they want to give him that opportunity if he is to go in the game.
Yeah.
So my question still remains. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
So you're asking what happens with Jamal Williams if Adam Jones comes back? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see Adam Jones take on at least half the work share. Williams has been involved a lot in the passing game, so he's been getting, I think, 3 or 4 targets a game. But we've seen Jones as the superstar of that team. I suspect Jamal Williams will take a backseat to Adam Jones in this one. But Nick, you are the local resident expert in Green Bay Packers. How do you feel about that statement?
I think Williams will be the guy this week, and he's priced at 6,100 on DFS. So could be an interesting buy there. Of course, I didn't start him last week in our fantasy league when he had a good performance, but Tyler Lockett solved that problem for me.
Oh,
he solved a lot of people's problems.
There's a lot going on in that game. But we're going to move on to another game affected by this.
No. Let's really quickly here. I know, but we got to talk about Aaron Rodgers quick. Come on. He's the third highest priced quarterback on DraftKings. Yep. Yeah. He's 7,600. He's had 3 games with wins greater than 20 miles per hour. And I just want to mention he still produces close to his career average in windy games. Yeah. So he's going up against the Vikings, who've been the 25th most points to opposing quarterbacks. He's got the best matchup when you remove Patrick Mahomes against the Jets, because we all know that Kansas City is going to steamroll the Jets, so it could be another Kansas City defense performance. We'll see. But he does have a pretty good matchup in this week, and I think he could be a reasonable play in DFS. I'm done here.
Yeah, now I'm going to cut Mike off finally, and we're going to move on to game 2 of our 4. But it was great info. Sean, why don't you talk us through the Raiders-Browns game?
Yeah, so we are concerned again with wind for this game, and that's going to be the theme for most of our games this week. We are expecting at least 20-mile-an-hour sustained, maybe up to 25-plus sustained, maybe even localized higher gusts for this game. Those winds are going to be parallel to the stadium. Our stadium is basically right on Lake Erie. And so the winds are going to be orientated going either quarterbacks are going to be going against the wind or with the wind, essentially. What's interesting about winds in Cleveland is QBs seem to be unusually impacted in Cleveland. Now, with that being said, we got to think about some of the QBs that usually we have in Cleveland, right? The sample size for that is usually a little bit below average for our QBs. But with that being said, we have David Carr, we have Baker Mayfield in this one. We don't have a large sample size for either one of these, but when we looked at David Carr, he didn't seem to have a huge impact due to wind. But I am a little bit worried about looking at a Cleveland location right along the lake. I think these can be impactful. I'm a little bit worried about people like or players like Ruggs this week who have a larger average depth of target. I don't know if David Carr, I'm as confident in him getting the ball downfield. I'd be much happier having like a Nelson Aguilar, who's priced about $200 cheaper. And I expect him to be a little bit more, getting the ball on the run a little bit more than potentially a Ruggs. On the other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield, he's at home. The Las Vegas Raiders are ranked number 28 in their passing defense. So I expect him to be able to pass the ball this game. I expect his upside to be a little bit limited if conditions get really windy and maybe relying a little bit more on Kareem Hunt. So I think Kareem Hunt's going to be involved both in the passing and rushing game this week. Is definitely to have his attempts, maybe north of 5 attempts and maybe target at least 5 to 6 targets this game. He's priced at $6,900, but I'm willing to pay up for him this week. I'm playing him this week. Las Vegas is ranked number 15 on the defensive end for rushing, but I'm confident in him. Between receivers on Cleveland, we have Higgins, we have Landry. I'm still thinking Jarvis Landry. He hasn't had really high point totals this year, but you can count on the targets. So I don't know, guys. What do you think? Let's say I didn't really mention Josh Jacobs' notice because I really don't know what to do with Josh Jacobs. He is either an incredibly boom or bust candidate. He's either getting 2 or 3 touchdowns a game or nothing. And he hasn't eclipsed the 100-yard mark, I don't believe yet. So in a matchup against the number 5 ranked rushing defense of the Cleveland Browns, who would you take here? Speaking of running backs from the Green Bay game, would you take a Williams priced at $6,100, or would you go with Josh Jacobs on the chance that he gets the TD and go with him at $6,200?
I'm going to save the $100 and go with Williams.
Yeah, it's only $100, exactly.
I struggle with Josh Jacobs this week. He's the lowest he's been all year on DFS. I mean, in week 3 he was at $7,300. He's down $1,000 now. He's a discounted price. But as you mentioned, Sean, he had a horrible game in week 7 against Tampa Bay. But don't forget, at Kansas City on week 5, he still put up 22 fantasy points. So he has some. I see some. He's limited with his knee, so maybe there's some injury concerns there. I think that Jacobs could be a decent play this week, even though he hasn't had a great week last week. He's coming off a bad week last week. I'm not too worried yet. I think he's going to have a decent floor in this game.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit worried about his floor. I was hoping he would get more involved in the passing game this year. He is getting some targets, don't get me wrong. I expected those to be a little bit more prevalent, especially in a windy game when they may need to do some more just dropping off the ball short. I'm not confident he's going to be getting those necessarily as consistently as I would like. And we've seen how he's done against tough defenses like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. Where I think he only got 17 yards. So I'm a little bit worried if the Las Vegas Raiders struggle to get in the red zone, where that's where he thrives, is in the red zone. I'm worried about his floor for this game a bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's him. And if we go to the receivers, how are you feeling about Rashard Higgins now that OBJ is out? Mike, you're an OBJ owner, or you were an OBJ owner. How are you feeling about that situation now?
I feel relieved. I do. I have to be honest. Like I've been having OBJ for a couple of years now, ever since he was traded, and he's just been the thorn in my side every year. I think he's single-handedly destroyed my fantasy team. So you never see it you never want to see a guy get hurt, right? He is a talent. He was great in the Giants, but now that he's out, he's hurt. He's out for the season. It makes me feel a little relieved in the sense that I don't have to sit there and bite my nails off, wondering if he's gonna, get a 3-point dud or a 60-point performance, which is far and few in between. So I'm feeling pretty good about cutting ties.
But what do you think about Higgins then taking kind of over here? A lot of people picked him up as a waiver wire pickup. Are you thinking him at 4,200? Or are you willing to pay up a little bit more for Landry at 5,600?
Well, we saw Mayfield spread it out last week, and it seemed like he was trying to force feed the ball to OBJ a lot, throughout the time where OBJ was playing. So I think Mayfield actually probably feels a little pressure taking off his shoulders here. He's going to feel a little bit more inclined to be able to spread the ball out. Higgins at a $4,200 price point in DFS. That's not too bad. I think he's gonna return on that value there. And as you mentioned, Landry is going to be a safe option here, getting targets as well.
Yeah. So talking about spreading the ball out,
I agree.
I think we're going to go to our next game, the Bills-Patriots game. Josh Allen loves to spread the ball out. But this game is kind of an anomaly in my mind. I'm going to call it the game of what ifs and what could be and who knows, because you have Cam Newton coming to town at the Patriots being the underdogs for the first time in many, many years to the Bills. You have Cam Newton who was benched. He's coming back. You wonder, and I'm only going to say this, and I don't want to cause a stir, but did COVID affect him differently? Is he a different player post-COVID than he was pre-COVID? So who knows? That could be an option too. But, this game, we do see the wind, we do see the rain, and you could turn the game into a ground and pound type game. But what does that mean? You see the New England defense, number 1 defense for passing, but they're number 18 for rush attempts, number 20 for rush yards, but Bills are number 27th for rushing. They don't have a setback. Moss outplayed Singletary last week. Are they going to do that again? The over-under started at 43. I know we were talking about this earlier, that it's now a 41. But Mike, I think hit on it, but it's not. You're just joining us. We've noticed that all our over-unders for these games that have weather actually have dropped about 2 points from the start to now. So, with the wind and the weather, and then we have Josh Allen at $7,000, fifth quarterback in DFS. Not enough games that we have seen yet in type weather events. He likes to run, but he also likes to spread the ball. Do you take him? That's the question to you guys. Do you take him for 7,000 with a stack with maybe I don't even know. I mean, Josh Brown's coming back. I would say the stack that I was looking at is Beasley, but there's upside on there. But there's also risk.
Yeah.
So have we seen Allen play in wind? I missed if you said it in the notes.
I could not. I don't think we have seen much of Allen play in the wind. With the max wind he's played in is about 16 miles an hour. And he's basically been pretty average. So I'm going to bring that up.
This is the winningest game.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Remember not that long ago, that Monday against Kansas City when it was raining. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get an event like that from rain, but we've seen Josh Allen in the rain recently. Yep. And it was not a pretty event for him. So if there's rain here, I'd be definitely more concerned with Josh Allen in this matchup.
Yeah, so I brought up all his weather events that we have, and the most wind was 16.11, and then precipitation.
Yeah, it does look like there's going to be a chance for rain here during this game. Yeah. Rain and wind. That sounds pretty brutal. I think I'm going to pass on Josh Allen this week, to be honest, in DFS lineups.
I'd agree. Yeah. I'm passing.
So then we get to the Patriots. And, their offense I'm so skeptical of what happens with Cam Newton. Cam Newton, on weather events, does perform about 5 points lower than his average that we've seen for winds and rain. But he's performing below his average, period. I don't know how you justify taking him. He's $5,700. I don't even think it's worth even contemplating him in a lineup, and being possibly benched again. Edelman's out. The receivers. The big question is Jacoby Myers. He had a great game last week. 6 catches, 60 yards, best game he's had all year. Do you take him for $3,500 on an upside? I mean, that could be. I mean, that's a risk, but I mean, that's a, swing for the fences type money in DFS. What do you know?
I mean, if you're trying to massage him in your lineup, maybe, right?
Yeah. So I think. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I'm just surprised that Myers had such a game last week because all season he hasn't shown much at all, right? Before that, it seemed to be Bird. They still have Edelman there. I know the rookie, the wide receiver on the Patriots, who I'm losing his name in my. He's hurt, so I don't. I think there's a risk there with regards to Jacoby Myers, just because of we haven't seen him a whole lot this year. And we tend to see some other wide receivers or running backs get involved in the passing game. So this
Mike,
might
you
have
were
been
talking about N'Keal Harry, were you?
Right, thank you, N'Keal Harry. Yeah, I think he's hurt now.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to do an update and get what his injury report is. I'm not sure what his status is right now.
He's questionable right now.
To round this out in this game, I mean, my opinion, stay away from everyone playing in this game. There just does not seem to be much upside. You know, yeah. Mike's going to interrupt me, but I'm not going to let him this time. I was going to talk about the running backs, but this game is tough. Moss and Singletary, they don't really know what they're doing. The Bills don't know what they're doing with those two. And the Patriots, I believe, I'm looking at my notes. Sorry. You have James White, who did nothing last week. 0. And then Harris, who did well, I think he may be out this week. So I'm staying away from the running backs. I think this game has some upside for some, performance on the, like I said, the receiver, but I just don't think it's worth it.
So are you staying away Zach Moss, $4,400, Devin Singletary, $5,100? You just staying away from these guys completely, or do you think any one of these is maybe a value at this point?
I mean, the value would be Zach Moss in my mind, but I'm staying away from him because you don't know. I mean, you just don't know. I think the running game is a mess in Buffalo right now, and this game is going to lead to a running game, and it's going to be a very interesting game. And on that note, I would say my personal preference, I would say take the under on this. I just don't see it being a high-scoring game. We saw what happened with the Bills in Kansas City in weather. They barely got to 43 points, and that's with Kansas City's high-powered offense. I think we just stay away, take the under. So our last game.
Wait, Colin. Before we go into the next game, I just want to say, I think you made a really important point with Cam Newton and weather events, and that 5 points is a tremendous amount of difference, compared to his normal means playing in weather games. So I just think that's probably one of the largest point differentials we've seen out of a quarterback playing in weather events.
Yeah, I mean, and the over-under for that game is not even 42 points. It's 41.5. So Vegas also is in tune with the weather. It
actually went down to 41.
Oh, it went down? What is it now?
It's 41.
Okay, so 41 now. I mean, yeah. So there's not going to be a whole lot of points scored in this game. I'm with Colin on that one, and I'm not super excited about anyone on any side of the ball, potentially with the exception of maybe some of the Bills wide receivers, but even there.
Yeah, rule of thumb in DFS, go for the high over-under games to like build out your lineup.
And this is not one of them.
So our last game on the docket to discuss is Saints at Bears, the Windy City. It's windy, and Sean's going to go on his soapbox, so I don't want to ruin it, but I actually am going to say it. It's not the Windy City because of winds. It's the Windy City because of politics, but it's still windy this week.
So weird.
It is.
Yeah, so the forecast in Chicago is about 24-mile-an-hour winds, maybe gusting up to 30, and temperatures around 40. So it could be a cool, blustery day in Chicago. Chicago is a really interesting place in terms of fantasy performance. When you look at all games played in Chicago, it actually matches distribution almost perfectly. So looking at skews based on weather in Chicago gives a sense that there may actually be a true signal there. And Chicago does show effects on almost all positions, especially in wind. So I'm going to start off here by talking about New Orleans. New Orleans is obviously going against the Bears defense, which is one of the top-ranked defenses against the pass. They've held quarterbacks to 57.1% completion rates. They're the third fewest yards per pass attempt, and they've only given up 4 passing touchdowns. So that already doesn't bode well for Drew Brees. Throw in that the New Orleans depth chart in wide receivers is not looking great right now either. Emmanuel Sanders is out. Benny Fowler's on IR. Michael Thomas is questionable. He practiced today, but we don't know if he's going to be able to perform. Marquez Callaway is also questionable. It just doesn't look good for Breeze or the New Orleans Saints offense.
So I have Breeze's data up, Nick, for you on the screen for everyone if you want to talk through this. I did it at 15-mile-an-hour winds and above.
Yep. So Breeze is interesting because he really hasn't been tested much in high wind events, and that's to be expected since he plays most of his games indoors or in the South. When it comes to Breeze performance in windy games, he definitely does show a little bit of a drop in performance against his career stats again, but the sample size is very small. I don't think Drew Brees has much upside in this game, given the forecast and also given the injury problems with wide receiver core.
I would agree there, Nick. I there's something funny here in my ESPN league. Drew Brees is actually on my free agent list, and I'm in need of a start of a quarterback because my starting quarterback is Murray is on a bye. So I'm looking at Drew Brees. And I'm like, wow, Drew Brees is actually on the free agent list, and I'm like, do I start him? And after looking at our information here, knowing there's going to be a win game, knowing he's at the end of his career, hasn't been performing as he normally Drew Brees does, with Michael Thomas potentially out here, I'm staying away from him. I'm actually biting a bullet here because I think I'm starting Jimmy Garoppolo over Drew Brees this week.
Did you ever think you would utter that statement, Mike? I'm starting Jimmy Garoppolo over Drew Brees.
I mean,
am I crazy, guys?
No, I mean, look at. I mean, if you look at the distribution here, based on his career stats, notice all the orange bars to the right, right? So he has a sample where obviously Drew Brees has performed and he's performed really well. Now, like Nick mentioned, this is a limited sample size, but notice all of the green bars. Those are more off to the right, which means during these windy games, he's not performing as well. Now, again, hey, we only have 4 games here, but he's barely surpassed 20 points in any one of these 4 games. And against the tough Bears defense, I think the potential for a boom game from Drew Brees, if that's what you're dependent on this week, it's not going to happen.
He's almost 5.5 points off his mean. It's even more than Cam that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And he's only played 10 games over 11-mile-per-hour winds. So I think Drew Brees is off the table here.
Honest question, guys. If Michael Thomas sits, who's the Saints' wideout number 1?
Got to go Cook.
So you go tight end, but I mean, dead serious. Of the wide receiving core that they have, who's the wide receiver 1?
It's like literally just wide receiver. I was going to say Alvin Kamara or Cook, but those aren't even options at this point.
I don't even know.
I guess it's Tre'Quan Smith, right? I mean,
yeah, Tre'Quan Smith has got to be. I don't even know.
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned Jared Cook. He's priced at $4,400 for tight ends, but again, if he gets a lot of targets, I don't think he's going to get in the end zone that much, and I think that hurts his value.
Yeah, I think he's going to have limited opportunities, but at least in the red zone he'll have limited opportunities.
So 4,400 in DFS isn't that bad. I don't know what it is as the ranking for like tight ends, but in full point PPR, if he does get 4 receptions, that gives him up to 4 points. He gets 40 yards. That could be enough to retain his 4,400 value. But again, I'm not hitching my wagon to this game. So
to finish up on New Orleans, Alvin Kamara could be an interesting play. Chicago's defense has kind of been middle of the road against the running game. Last week, I think they gave up 161 yards to the Colts, and Phillips Rivers didn't have a great game, so they really went to the running game there. But Kamara could have an interesting performance this week, although I think he's priced pretty high, as he should be.
It's a star. It's been amazing this year.
I think of any players this week, that's who I'd be going for.
Yeah,
it's Kamara.
I love that guy. He almost won us $1,000, Mike. Too bad for that correction.
Well, if you had him last year, you have a very sour taste in your mouth, like I do. He was not a good producer last year.
So, I mean, other than Kamara, is there anybody else you'd start on the Saints side? Is it maybe Cook?
Maybe. I would look elsewhere, though, I think. I think the Bears' defense is just too strong against the pass right now.
Yeah. I think there's better options at tight end. You could take a flyer on. I noticed Johnny Smith is very cheap. Yeah, Colin.
You were saying that you went for running backs this year or this week on your DFS. I haven't looked at your lineup. Are you taking
Oh, I
Kamara?
haven't posted it yet.
Oh, are you taking? I think from this conversation, I would put a bet that Kamara 8200 is in that lineup.
He is
Ooh.
not in that
Yeah,
lineup.
he's already got Delvin Cook.
I do.
Oh, that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's a possible switch out if he doesn't play, but I think he's coming back. So I'll tell you guys right now, sneak peek. I'll be releasing this blog out tomorrow. But of the running backs, I'm actually going with Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and Myles Gaskin in my flex. Those are my three running backs.
20 grand, 25 grand on running backs.
Yeah, I definitely paid down for wide receivers this week by far, and my quarterback. I'm taking a flyer on the first game ever professional.
Tua.
There it is.
Oh, pick of the
Hans?
year.
Oh man,
Rookie
Mike,
of the
that's a
year
bold
for-
move.
That's
a bold move.
I like
We have
that move. I
no
like
data
that
on
move.
him. We have no idea how he's going to perform.
And he's got a tough matchup against the Rams, but you know what? No one knows how Tua is going to perform here. So he's priced in at 5,600. I'm taking a flyer on him. I want to see what he does.
Rams defense has been stout of late. Killed the Bears last week.
Well, it's the
So,
Bears,
Nick,
Sean. Come on.
Circling back, is there anything else you want to talk about the Bears Saints game?
I think some people may be interested here in starting Nick Foles. The New Orleans defense has given up the third most fantasy points to QBs, but I think Nick Foles actually struggles pretty significantly in weather events. And if you were to show Nick Foles in our tool, with some wind, you'll see
I'll let you know when I bring up.
You'll see a pretty significant drop in his performance. I think it's like 10% or so.
Wow.
So I think Nick Foles is a dangerous start here. If you can find better value somewhere else, I would stay away from him in this game.
That's a good point
for you. So I got it up for you for.
Nick Foles looked really rough against the Rams. And so did just the Bears offense in general.
It's a 60% drop in fantasy performance. And his TD production goes down significantly. On average, he throws about 1.25 touchdowns a game. And when you factor in wind, it drops to less than a touchdown, really less than half a touchdown. So I think Foles is also off the table in this game. I don't really think there's anyone I would start in here except the Chicago defense and maybe Kamara.
How do you feel about Montgomery?
Ty Montgomery? Is he still out?
No, David Montgomery.
David Montgomery running back.
David Montgomery, yeah.
There's your answer. I don't know.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
He hasn't been that bad. He had a pretty solid floor, David Montgomery this year.
Safe floor, I would agree. Safe floor.
Not a lot of upside, but a floor has been there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in seeing how much he's going in DraftKings right now. He's at 5,900.
Yeah.
He's right around like Alexander Madison, Gio Bernard, Jerick McKinnon, Melvin Gordon range. I don't know.
I like that Bernard play at 5,800 there. I haven't seen any status updates with the injury.
Yeah.
So I mean, he might be another solid play again this week.
Yeah, agreed.
So circling it back with so everyone saw that. I apologize. I shared the wrong screen. Anyways, so bringing it back, closing it out. We have 4 games that'll be updated on our table online. We have to recap: Green Bay Vikings game, New England Buffalo, Raiders Browns, and Saints Chicago. All real windy games. We saw 3 out of the 4 quarterbacks in win games have almost a 5-point reduction in fantasy PPR, which is unbelievable. Maybe the sample size is small for some of them, but it's something to think about, something to really take into account if you're doing a DFS lineup. We did talk about it a little bit. We're going to circle back to kind of the other game of the week. Titans-Bengals games. We talked about it in the beginning a little bit. Mike, you want to bring anything else up again on that game?
Yeah, it just wind's going to be a marginal event there. There's going to be some breeze, but it's not going to be as bad as some of the other games. So I think you can still start your players and feel confident about them in that game. And again, I mentioned here, I'm going with Derrick Henry in DFS because the guy's a monster, and I think he's gonna shred the Bengals here.
Yeah, I'm not super concerned about the Bengals game. I just don't think the conditions are going to be strong or persistent enough to have a significant impact.
So Looks like we may have lost Nick, but that's okay because we're wrapping up. Another great week, another great show, guys. Big weather week,
Yeah.
windy week. It's fun. We may do another. Sean and Mike may do another Sunday morning, depending on the game and the weathers. We'll let you know on Twitter. Follow us at Weather Guys on Twitter. At YouTube, we'll post this. We'll put it on Castbox for the live show. It'll be on Twitch for the next 7 days. Thank you for all the viewers today. We definitely hit a milestone. We had I saw at one point we had 21 viewers at once. I appreciate it all. Thank you for the questions. Sean, Mike, anything before we close?
That's fantastic. 21 viewers.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for all the support here, guys. Again, Mike and I will probably be live on Sunday if you have specific questions about players. Quick update for the Carolina Panther game. We do have some showers that are developing west of the stadium area. So again, we can expect maybe some rain showers early on, but those should move past the stadium as the game goes on. So nothing to be too concerned about.
And I just want to say, guys, I get to watch the Jets play this weekend on Red Zone because I know Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in the Red Zone pretty much the entire day. So I'll get to see some scoring.
Man. Well, at least you don't have the Giants playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in primetime Monday night, Mike.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But
Pick your poison.
He's a Jets fan, so I mean, he's always kind of hiding his head anyway. Well, as always, it was awesome. See you Sunday. Thanks again. Great show. See you next week.